Go district. Bleed, I ball. Bleed, I ball. Bleed, I ball. Bleed, ball. And I bleed, I ball. Bleed, I ball. Bleed, I ball. Cause I bleed. Hey, bleeding I ball, defeated the odds, didn't see him at all. JD in the pods, I needed it all. I bleeded a lie, you bleeded a lie, not bleeded a lie. And that's what I go do. Facts, let me show you. Happen to know dudes, draft and they don't do bad and they don't lose. Make you wanna bleed. It's the Go District boys giving you the business and no gimmicks. The best ball drafts got me feeling like it's Christmas. Then it's Christmas all of a sudden and these riches came from nothing. And I got this all from loving a district. See, I just drafted, forget it. I laugh at the critics, they mad at the digits. I clap back by listening. See, ballin' ain't a problem if you kick it with them off. And I refresh the feet till autumn, then I bleed, go.
What is up, Fantasyland? If there is a fantasy football streets out there where there are those freestyle battles, I know who I'm bringing to the game. The man bun himself, dropping the sick lyrics. Just, he does it every time, and the anthem does it every time. I hope you guys appreciate it. We appreciate you guys joining us today. We got some new graphics on the board. From music to graphics, Theo, we've got our boy Matty Big Chest, who's put together a nice collection. You guys will be seeing some new art dropped as we bring in the new shows coming up in these few weeks. Tonight, Theo, another monster guest, and we're talking two of our favorite things, my friend: best ball and stacking. How pumped are you, man?
I'm stoked. JD and I are splitting a 125 FFPC best ball tournament entry right now, so we've been talking stacks. We've been galaxy braining. We've been getting after it. It's coming up on our pick, maybe 5 picks away. So we were just talking about strategy. I know a lot of us who are listening in and watching are doing Best Ball Mania on Underdog. You're doing the $35 tournament on FFPC. I did an FFWC tournament recently. They have a $50 Best Ball tournament I did with Billy Muzio, and also Glenn Lowy was in that one. So it's just nonstop best ball this time of year. I mean, I think it's just nonstop, and it gets heavier and heavier each season.
Theo, I'm listening to you list off these tourneys. Like, how spoiled are we? You know what I mean? Like, think 3 to 5 to 6 years ago, you're playing MFL 10s, and that's basically the option. And now you have a buffet of best ball tournaments. I mean, you could play for up to $2 million. Who would have thunk? But let's get into it, man. Bring in our guest tonight. You see him on the screen. Waste no more time, my friend. Bring the man in.
Yeah, so one guy that I love to follow, I like to read his articles. Whenever he's on a podcast, I like listening to him. This is his second time in the GOAT District. Established the runs, Jack Miller. And tonight we're going to talk a lot of best ball. How you doing tonight, Jack?
I'm good. Thank you guys for having me on. I got to say that intro with the music and the video, it got me pumped up. So yeah, happy to be here. Thanks for having me on again.
No, awesome. I mean, we'll dive right into it. You've been putting out some fantastic pieces on Establish the Run. This week I really dove into a lot of them. You wrote an article basically called "The Impact of Stacking on Underdog," specifically the Underdog tournament, which we're all playing. Why should we be stacking in the Underdog tournament, and how does it correspond to win rates?
Yeah, so basically what stacking does is it increases the correlation on your roster because, a quarterback and the other players on his offense, and really just any two players on the same offense, their outcomes are correlated. Because if Zach Wilson has a big year, not that we expect that, then Jets pass catchers are probably going to end up doing better than we expected. And so what it does is it widens our range of outcomes because we want these extreme outcomes in the tournaments. And so, sometimes we'll get bad outcomes where offenses disappoint, but sometimes we'll get the good outcomes where the offense does better than expected. And so then we'd expect multiple players on that offense, whether that be a quarterback and pass catcher or whatever, to outperform ADP. And so that's kind of the idea behind stacking.
No, awesome. And you dove deeper into it in this article. Maybe you could kind of share the advance rates, because I thought they were interesting. basically you run down the list of top 30%, top 10%, top 1%. What did you find with this?
Yeah, so teams with a stack last year had a 16.8% advance rate. Those without any stack at all had a 15.6% advance rate. So that's a difference right off the bat. The issue with that is that 92% of teams had at least one stack, and that can be, by design because people want to stack. Or if you draft 18 players and you're drafting 2 or 3 quarterbacks, a lot of the time you're just going to chance your way into a stack, even if you're not trying to. So 92% of teams had a stack. So we kind of need to go a little deeper than that to actually get an edge over the field, since everyone is already kind of stacking. So just getting one stack doesn't really do a whole lot. And so what I found in the article is that either stacking more players, stacking more quarterbacks, or including more players in your stack has tended to increase best ball advance rates. And so I guess just taking the idea of stacking a step further than just I have a stack is something that we can use to get an edge. And everyone's stacking these days, but taking it a step further, I found in the article, led to better metrics across the board.
What positions should we be stacking? What did you find with your research on that?
So, I mean, the most obvious stacking position that you want to stack with a quarterback would be receiver, because that's where most targets go. But tight end, same idea. I didn't find much of a correlation between quarterbacks and running backs in terms of advance rates. And when Mike Leone did this a couple years ago, he found the same thing. But I still think just intuitively, if a quarterback succeeds, it means the offense probably did well too. And so I think a quarterback running back stack still makes sense. And it's not something maybe you want to go out of your way for, but like if it falls into your lap, it's a good idea. But what we really want to look for are the quarterback receiver stacks. And to a lesser extent, but still important, are the quarterback tight end stacks. But the quarterback wide receiver stacks have really been what has boosted win rates over the past couple of years.
Is there too much? Is there a number where it's too much stacking on one offense or one team? Or
I think so, for sure. I mean, when I did this article, I found that like you could stack, just a ton of players on an offense and have a really high advance rate. Like I found the optimal range was like 4 to 8 players in total stacked, and that's like 4 in offense if you have 2 quarterbacks. But I think Underdog's Hayden Winks had this article, which I think made a good point about how these tournaments are kind of structured, and that all of the money is decided in the last couple of weeks. So while bigger stacks lead to higher advance rates, if you kind of think about like how we want to optimize for weeks 15 through 17, like, I mean, last year, a good example is Burrow and Chase in week 17 against the Chiefs. Like a Bengals onslaught would have crushed over the full season last year, but in week 17, in the big money week when you really, really needed it, even though Burrow had a huge week, Chase was the big beneficiary. And so I think there's an argument to be made that while like these just massive offensive onslaughts with 4 or 5 players from the same team have done really well in terms of advancement, maybe the smaller stacks could benefit you more for like a tournament structure like we're dealing with in Best Ball Mania.
One thing we always kind of get caught up in is you take a QB1 in one of these slim best ball tournaments, and then you follow up. Usually people I think are following a 2 QB build. Some people like a 3 QB build. We could talk about that for a long time, and we will get to your preferred build. But should you be stacking with your QB1, your QB2, or both?
Yeah, so I think in general, the more you can stack, the better, and the data board bared that out last year. I can pull up the exact numbers, but teams that had 2 quarterbacks last year and stacked both of them did really, really well last year. Among teams with exactly 2 quarterbacks that stacked them both had a 17.7% advance rate. If you had 2 quarterbacks and you only stacked 1, that was still a 17.3% advance rate. And for what it's worth, the average advance rate is 16.7. So anything above 16.7 is above average. And then if you stack neither of your 2 quarterbacks, you advance 16.4% of the time. So we kind of see like a linear increase. And so when possible, you definitely, I think, want to stack 2 quarterbacks. I think there is some nuance to it, and this is kind of something I want to research at some point, but I haven't yet. When Leone did this article for ETR in 2020, he had what I thought was a really interesting point about like mobile quarterbacks like Lamar and Hurts, and that like they can have these massive spike weeks without 2 or more pass catchers also having massive spike weeks. So that's something I want to look into a little more. And maybe there's like something to be said that maybe mobile quarterbacks are less important to stack, but like the passers we need to stack. But in general, yeah, I think you just stack every quarterback you can, and the data supports that.
Yeah, shout out to Zachary Kruger, who's been on the Goat District pod a number of times. He actually wrote an interesting article about how mobile quarterbacks can affect other positions. It is a very good read as well. JD, do you have any follow-ups for those particular questions?
I wanted to ask, it seems you said 92% of teams last year had some kind of stack. If everybody's stacking, which it seems like finally everybody's kind of caught up and you're kind of the odd man out if you're not, is there a way to zig while everyone's zagging?
I think the way to zig in a smart way would be to kind of, I guess, take it a step further and stack both quarterbacks. I think zigging, if you think like everyone's stacking, so I'm going to zig and not stack, I don't think that's the way to go about it, because we know correlation is so important in these tournaments, and all of the data supports that. So I think like what we just talked about with stacking both of your quarterbacks on a 2 QB team, or making double stacks actually last year, if you stack 2 wide receivers with a quarterback, those advanced at a super high rate. So I think that kind of stuff is a way to gain an edge. So I guess the way to zig, in my opinion, would be to lean even further into building correlation rather than the opposite, if that makes sense.
What about, sorry, Theo, let me just,
go ahead.
Just to finish on this, what about avoiding maybe the more obvious stacks? So let's say everybody's drooling over the Buffalo Cincy game, in week 17, or one of those, the KC Denver or the LA games. Are you maybe more inclined to, if you're trying to zig again, just as we're on the topic here, maybe you're looking at the Jets Seattle game or something, you know what I mean? Like you're trying to go to the Tennessee Dallas game, or as opposed to stacking too many teams with those more obvious ones.
No, yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense too. I mean, it's kind of hard to find like the breaking point, right? Because those games are popular because they project up a lot of offense. And to be honest, I don't really know how to like put a number on when we should zig when others zags in terms of which games we're looking to stack. But I definitely think that if you're building a larger portfolio, it makes a lot of sense to include a lot of week 17 game stacks, a lot of different week 17 game stacks in that.
Okay.
Let's say you draft a Stephon Diggs or a Jamar Chase, and for whatever reason you miss out on the quarterback correlation. Do you still advise to lean into those like guys you've spent higher draft capital and try to get, maybe a Jamison Crowder or a Tyler Boyd, or maybe another wide receiver, and just try to build on that? Or at that point, are you looking to pivot?
I think that makes sense too, because like the most obvious correlation is between a quarterback and a pass catcher, but there's correlation between the offense as a whole too. I mean, if Diggs has a good year, then Crowder, I think, is probably also more likely to have a good year, just because it means the offense succeeds. I mean, there is kind of the element of it could go the opposite way, where maybe Crowder has a good year because like Diggs gets hurt or something, which I think is an idea that comes up a lot with running backs. But with receivers, at least, I think in general, taking multiple receivers on the same offense, even if you miss out on the quarterback, there's still some positive correlation there. And then if you miss out on Burrow with Chase, then you could also kind of pivot and build a game stack for that week 17 game instead of getting the actual stack.
So you still get exposure to the game itself, without necessarily the quarterback. I think that makes a lot of sense. Follow up on JD's question about being unique, and it's not on the show sheet, but I think more and more this offseason, you're hearing people talk about reaching to become unique. What are your thoughts on reaching in general in order to have a unique build? And then I'll follow up with, once you start establishing a stack, are you looking to reach to try to keep building on it? And like, how high up would you push guys to do so?
Yeah, so me personally, I don't want to reach too far just for the sake of getting unique. I think there needs to be a bigger emphasis on getting unique this year with 450K entries in Best Ball Mania 3, but just like pretty much every piece of analysis you look at says that the market has pretty good predictive power. Another article Hayden did this offseason looked at the downsides of reaching past ADP, and I think it was pretty impactful, with me at least. And so I try not to reach too far past ADP, and I'm actually doing an article on that right now, and it basically says the same thing.
What's too far? 1 round, 12 spots,
like
10?
Really, like, just I don't think that's how I would think about it. I think just like
Tiers?
avoid reaching. Yeah, I think tiers is a good way. And then I don't think you want to set like a label. Like I refuse to reach 12 picks past ADP. I kind of think it's a case by case basis. But for stacking, I think maybe you can make a little bit of an exception. And this was something we looked at in the article. And basically, like a small reach still was plus EV. And how we defined it is we just added up like how many total spots you reached on a player for all players in the stack. So like if you take Diggs 2 spots after ADP and Allen 4 spots before ADP.
That's exactly how I would have done it.
Yeah. So that would have a -2 value because you're getting +2 value on Diggs, -4 on Josh Allen. And so what we found, we said a minor reach was 16 total spots in the stack, and that group still had a positive advance rate relative to expectation. But beyond that, if you were reaching more than that in total among all the guys in your stack, then you started to give away too much value. So that's kind of how I think about it. Like reach a little bit if you need to, but like if you're completely ignoring the market just for the sake of the stack, it becomes not worth it, in my opinion.
So you said 16 plus 16 on a total stack, and that was a minor. That was minor reach. You considered that?
Like negative, like yeah,
right.
-16 value is kind of how we did it.
So it means does that mean you reached by 16 spots?
Yeah, in total among all the guys in your stack.
Okay.
So shout out to Andrew Schellenberg, another member of the GOAT District, who's not here tonight. But we've talked about not only in best ball, but in FFPC tournaments like the FFPC main event or the FFPC football guys, NFFC RotoWire Online Championship, building a unique team by taking like a Justin Jefferson at the 101. What do you think of that when you're at the 101 in one of these tournaments? Are you looking to take the Taylors and the CMCs, or do you think that could be a plus strategy to push one of those wide receivers who you never get at the 106? It seems like the 106 is like the worst place to be right now. You got to push a guy up. Do you think it makes some sense to get exposure to those guys in a different way, in a different build, by taking a wide receiver 101?
What I've been doing so far is taking the Taylors and CMCs when I get 101. I get the idea. I know that like you're giving up like a significant edge in points, but I honestly I just don't know how to like quantify the value of that unique build. And I think like I definitely get the argument behind it. It's not what I've been doing. And I think I'm gonna like keep sticking with the Taylors and the CMCs. I think especially because like at the 101, like that's the part of the draft where the difference in like expected, I guess, value is the highest. And so you're just giving up so much. I guess that's the side I'm on, but like if someone did find a way to like math it out and show that the uniqueness was worth it, and I was wrong on that and the uniqueness was worth it, it wouldn't totally shock me, especially as these best ball tournaments get bigger and more emphasis gets placed on the tournament weeks. So I guess it's kind of a non-answer, because I'm not totally sure or like confident in my answer, but I've been doing CMC Taylor at the 101.
Yeah, it's definitely an interesting approach, just because like even if you get to the FFPC main event, every single team is going to have Taylor or CMC as the 101. Best Ball Mania, I would bet that it's 95% are going to have those guys at the 101, maybe higher than that. So just an interesting idea. What about trying to be unique where you get exposure, like JD brought up the Buffalo Cincinnati game, where maybe you want a piece of that game, but you instead of necessarily taking digs, you would build with like a Knox and a Gabe Davis, Knox, and Allen without digs. Those kind. What do you think about building unique stacks in that sense, where you would grab the top offenses, but maybe some more like the ancillary pieces instead of like the main piece?
Definitely. No, I think that makes a ton of sense. Because I mean, just any stack is good. And then you have that added upside with the, if Diggs gets hurt, then that stack could just go completely crazy. So you have kind of that angle where the ancillary pieces could benefit from an injury to the top piece. And then you also have the uniqueness factor. So I think building stacks like that makes a ton of sense, especially if you're building like 150 lineups in Best Ball Mania or whatever. I think you can have some Diggs Allen if you want it, but I think also making an Allen Davis Knox or whatever, I think that makes a ton of sense too. And I think finding unique stacks is a really good way to get unique without giving away too much.
Good, because JD and I have a really good looking Joe Burrow, T. Higgins, Tyler Boyd stack going right now. We might lean in with a little Hayden Hurst coming up. So glad to hear that one.
Theo, let me get Matthew here. Matthew's got a comment about what we're discussing, maybe a comment and a question, and then he's got a specific question about a tournament. Doesn't the concept of reaching assume that the market is actually efficient / accurate? Example, somebody who drafted Cup in the second round last year still got a great value despite ADP saying it was a reach.
Yeah, I mean, I think every year there's going to be like examples of guys where if you just like took them earlier, it ended up being right. But I think on average, the market is pretty good. And Blair Andrews at RotoViz is kind of the guy who I always bring up when this topic comes up. He did an article a few years ago, basically comparing like expert rankings from Fantasy Pros to ADP, and he couldn't really find a difference. So I think even if ADP is going to be wrong every year, like there's always going to be guys who smash ADP. There's always going to be guys who like fall way, way short, even without injury. Like ADP is never going to be perfect. And there's guys it's going to miss on every single year. But I think it's a lot easier said than done to identify them in advance. Because at this time last year, like it would have been awesome if you drafted Cup in the second round, but it could have easily gone very bad if you drafted someone who didn't live up to expectations in the second round. And so I think like leaning on the market kind of makes sense, just because it's so hard to pick out like the individual places it's wrong, if that makes sense.
So he just has a question. I don't know if you've done any of these, Theo. Maybe you can add the FFPC Terminator tournament. So basically, it's a 26-round best ball where one player is dropped from the roster each week of the season. Do you have any advice, or is this too niche? Matthew's asking. Either of you have anything on this? I don't think I've done one of these on FFPC. I may have done one in the past and just can't remember right now.
I don't play Terminator, but I would think, yeah, that's a tough one. I'd have to put a little thought.
And maybe Matthew can ask. So I got a question. Is it dropped? Is it like your lowest scoring guy gets dropped every week, or do you drop a guy every week?
I was going to ask that too. I have no idea.
I believe you picked the player,
because I know John Bosch has his eliminators for fantasy cares. speaking of, the fishbowl coming up, and those ones, they're eliminators where, you're each week, the worst team gets eliminated, basically the lowest score every week. So, and then there's some that I've seen on other sites where like the lowest guy on your team gets eliminated every week or something like that. So I guess this one he's saying you get to choose the player you want to drop. There you go.
Yeah, I think that's yeah. We'll come back to that.
We'll try to come up with something. We'll come back to it. Pretty niche, but we love the question. Still love the question, Matthew. Appreciate you, brother.
So we didn't talk about correlating running backs, and we've gone into some other best ball guests and kind of deep dove into this one. I think there's the obvious is like if it's a DeAndre Swift or an Austin Eckler, and a guy with a ton of receptions, there's value in correlating with the quarterback. Would you agree with that?
I think so. I mean, like we didn't find any difference in advance rate when we just looked at like broad QBRB, but I think like just thinking a little critically about it, like that, and Swift, Kamara, McCaffrey, Eckler, all these guys, I definitely think it makes sense to correlate them with the quarterback because they contribute so much in the passing game.
What about the running back that might not contribute in the passing game, but you're kind of diving into the offense itself? Do you think that that's negative or positive? It's a little like, and it's probably a bad example, but Jonathan Taylor goes 101. Do you think that there's benefit to correlating with maybe a lower volume passing offense like a Matt Ryan as your QB2 to potentially grab a bunch of Colts and have a pretty unique Colts build?
Yeah, so I do think that it's like positive in theory. The numbers haven't really like shown a difference at all, but I think if Taylor has a good year, it tracks that the Colts offense has a good year as well. So I think just it makes sense in that regard. It's not something that I would like go out of my way to do. So maybe if you say I'll reach this much for a quarterback receiver stack, then you reach a little less to get a quarterback to pair with a running back. But I think the idea of like getting pieces on the same offense in general because of the correlation still makes sense.
I feel like with that one, it's like when you might really appreciate it if you happen to get to, week 17, week 16, and a team could have just a monster game and you have exposure to that. I do wonder if it would be difficult to even get there, though, if you're kind of banking on that kind of offense. It's just an interesting way to look at it because I think we always think about the pass-catching backs, but, could an offense go nuclear and have a running back just score a bunch of touchdowns and have some correlation with like a wide receiver one and a quarterback? Just galaxy brain in that one, JD.
Yeah, I think who was it? I think it's Davis Maddock or some one of those guys I heard today. Speaking of, and go check out Jack's session with our buddy Davis talking about best ball strategy. What was it that he said again? Oh, he was, and maybe it may have even been Jack talking with him about this, but just like if you think about best ball, and I said earlier how spoiled we are, and we look 3-4 years ago at completely different kind of best ball picture out there. And, we don't have that much data, man. When you think about it, it's a very small, we've got maybe 2-3 years of data on this, like stacking and strategy. Like, I think Larky, our buddy Larky, was one of the first guys to really come out with, the whole kind of theoretical approach. We were all doing it. We were promoting stacking, but really nobody sat down and I think kind of put it all into like a strategy approach. And he kind of did that, put the research behind it. And then guys like you are just kind of taking it to the next level. So I think now we're going to have more data. And as you're talking, Theo, there's a lot of stuff that you're bringing up, and it's like, it could be, right, Jack? It's like I'm in the medical field, and unless it's clinically proven, you can't really say this is going to happen or this does this unless there's clinical data to support it, right? So it's kind of the same thing.
Yeah, and especially with Underdog, because there's only 2 years of Best Ball Mania, and the Best Ball Mania data is really good. Like they include everything, and so there's just a bunch of stuff you can do with it. But like the problem is that there's only 2 years of it, and so that just makes like anything you say you have to kind of preface by saying like it's a 1-year sample, but this is what we found.
So let's dive into it. What are your favorite stacks right now that in your builds? Like, what stacks do you find yourself continually going to and looking to get exposure to?
Yeah, so I think one that I have a good amount of, I've actually kind of backed off recently, and I'll explain why. But I think the Brady Godwin stack is really interesting and really just, I know Buck stack is super popular, but I think they're just going to go nuts with Antonio Brown gone, the receivers, because Antonio Brown, if I'm remembering right, I think he was first in targets per route run last year. So there's just like a ton of volume up for grabs. And then Godwin specifically, he was a big beneficiary of when Antonio Brown was not playing last year. I think he had like almost 10 targets a game without AB last year. The reason I haven't been drafting him recently is because Justin Herzig, I thought, made a good point about how with the ACL, like Godwin's not going to play week 1. We don't know when he is going to play. And so as we get closer to the season, his ADP might start to drop. And so I'm kind of just letting it drop right now, and then I'll start hitting it again. But I think Brady Godwin could be a unique stack in the playoffs because he's missing, 4 weeks. So if you get to the playoffs with Brady Godwin, that's probably going to be pretty unique.
He's kind of like drafting a rookie, right? He's like drafting a rookie Godwin right now at this point.
And so if Godwin goes off like week 17, and they have a good playoff schedule too, is another thing. I think they have like the most fantasy friendly schedule based on an article I did.
I know they finished in Carolina week 17.
Yeah, they just project to score a bunch of points during the fantasy playoffs, like even more than they do during the regular season. And so that, and then Mike Evans too, Gronk, really Russell Gage. Like I really like the Buck stack. I know that's popular, but that's one I find myself getting a lot.
Cardinals and San Fran the weeks prior to that.
That's a super interesting take on Godwin, and I think that even if you want to take it to a redraft level, like in the draft that JD and I are in, he went off the board as wide receiver 24, and I think that any single week that he's healthy with Brady, you're going to see Godwin, no lower than like wide receiver 14. So you're already getting like a discount on that one. And in some of these non-best ball tournaments, like it's still it's a managed league, so it's not necessarily as good as good an example, but Godwin's still going in that wide receiver 24, wide receiver 25 range in a football guys that I'm in. He's super interesting for redraft as well. And I'm glad you brought up Russell Gage, because I think a way you could play the Godwin exposure is if you take Russell Gage as well, you can bank some of those early weeks. We're expecting Gage to have, high volume early weeks, and it could be like a nice bridge play until you get Godwin back. And if Evans happens to go down, which at his age it could happen, you would have the two wide receivers with Brady in a short 3-week run. So it's definitely an interesting play, and I think that right off the top, injured guys are great to target because some people don't want any part of them. I think a lot of people go into a draft and say, I don't want any part of any of these injured guys. So if you're willing to take on some risk, you always get a little bit of a value on them, and there's a potential big payout. Just to jump off the subject here, what's your take on getting exposure to Jameson Williams, who also has a little bit of question marks in terms of his recovery time from the ACL?
Yeah, I mean, he scares me a little just because, like, as a rookie, if he's not going to play until like late October, he's missing like camp, and so it's going to take him some time, I think, to get up to speed, just like being on an NFL field for the first time and developing rapport with his quarterback, whereas Godwin and Hopkins and some of these other guys, I mean, Hopkins is suspended, but same idea. They already have played with their quarterback before, and they're already proven at the NFL level, whereas Jameson, you kind of have to be right in terms of that the injury will be manageable, and then you also have to be right that he's good and he will be a good fit with Goff. So I haven't been drafting a ton of Jameson, but I definitely get the argument for him from the perspective, like we just talked about with Godwin, where he'll be ready when it matters. He's a rookie too, so he can improve throughout the season. And I mean, just the play style with the speed from a best ball perspective, another plus. So I personally,
sorry, go ahead, man. Sorry.
Oh, I was just saying I personally haven't been drafting a ton, but I get like why people are on him.
It's the
JD,
OBJ effect, right? They want that OBJ rookie effect where he came in and back in 2015. My glory to the Football Guys Championship was OBJ off my bench, taking me to that final week in 5th place, final weekend, and then my Colts just farted the bed and Andrew Luck killed me. It's heart crushing.
JD, who's your favorite of the like upper echelon type stacks right now?
Well, T. Higgins, obviously my most owned player on the FFPC is anything Cincinnati. You know, you and I have talked like, and not even necessarily with Chase. I don't know if it. Well, I personally, I like T. Higgins. You know, just I prefer him over Chase. Just you know, not necessarily in fantasy, but so I lean that way. But I like how he's kind of, you know, in a sense, he kind of offers you value because he does offer you that upside that you still have with Chase. You know, maybe he hasn't gone off necessarily, but even actually he did in the playoffs, right? He went off, had some big games, and I think that you're going to see more of that now that the league knows about Chase and knows how this offense rolls. So you're going to see adjustments on the defense that's going to allow T to have more of those games. So I like the Cincy stacks. I like that, you know, you have Boyd. And you can even go with Hayden Hurst later on and get kind of those deep ones. I think the ones in the front end of the drafts are, you know, have been kind of beaten down. I'm liking the ones at the back end, you know, the Houston ones that you can kind of recoup and build up the back end of your roster when you're doing these best ball tourneys. The Jacksonvilles, you know, with Theo and I are doing the Jets. I mean, they're a little expensive, but they give you a really nice, you know, they give you a really nice stack with tons of upside, right? That's what's nice about these guys is you're getting a lot of these lower end stacks with a lot of upside, whereas a lot of the guys you're getting at the top end, as you know, you're getting them at the top end. So I like playing with the not so obvious stacks. I think right now is what I'm doing. I think in the beginning of the off season, we were doing the more obvious ones, and I think of these tournaments, as we go deeper into them, I think like anyone else, I'm sure we're all trying to find that uniqueness, right? So it's all about finding those sneaky stacks. Who's the Evan Ingram, you know, getting those guys stacked with the Jacksonville guys, and you know, we're talking about what's his face in this round, Jameson Williams, and what I was going to ask you, like a quick OTC, a guy going close to him is Rondell Moore. Which guys, who do you prefer? You got to remember, like Hopkins is out at the beginning of the year, so you kind of have the opposite with Rondell, right? Maybe we haven't seen it, what we want to see, but offers the upside and the opportunity as well. What do you think, Jack?
Yeah, I like Rondell. Before I go into Rondell, I'm with you guys on the Jags and Jets. I think those are two good stacks. If we're kind of diving deep, this isn't as deep, but I like the Giants stack with Daniel Jones. I think he has some nice rushing, and then Kadarius Toney too. So I guess those would be my three kind of less popular stacks: Jags, Jets, Giants. But on Rondell, I mean, Cliff talked him up recently. Hopkins is out 6 weeks. The concern is that, like, even in college, he never really operated downfield. And then last year, they pretty much just used him as a gadget. But Cliff has been talking him up as in, like, he's going to be a real wide receiver this year, and the opportunity is there with Kirk gone, Hopkins suspended. And the prospect profile was really good from a production standpoint and an athletic standpoint. So I'm coming around on Rondale, and I'd take him over Jameson right now. If his ADP goes crazy, I might back off just because of the unprovenness as a whole lot more than like kind of a gadget guy. But right now, I think Rondale's a fine pick at his ADP.
We don't really hear anybody talking about stacking the Chiefs like we used to. I mean, that used to be like the holy grail to get a Tyreek Hill, Pat Mahomes team.
I did that in our $35 Superflex. I got Mahomes, Juju, and Sky. The thing is, you could literally just mix in any of those receivers because we have no idea. I mean, people are leaning Juju getting the bulk of the targets, but we really have no idea. People are saying MVS is going to be the guy. You could just mix and match these guys. And like you said, you're getting a discount right now, the way the perception is on that offense.
Are you attempting to build KC stacks right now, Jack? And we'll say without Travis Kelce, or like wide receivers with Mahomes?
If I get Mahomes, which I haven't drafted a bunch of Mahomes so far, but if I get Mahomes, I definitely think so, because someone besides Kelce is going to get the receiving work. We don't really know who it's going to be right now, and I mean they could still like add someone else because the receiving core is so like unproven. But yeah, I think if I get Mahomes in a draft, then I definitely would be looking to add really any of the guys you named: Juju, MVS, Sky Moore's ADP, at least on Underdog, is kind of wild, but I would still, have him in the conversation if I have Mahomes. So yeah, I think if I get Mahomes, any of them are viable.
Sky Moore's the one that I think it's like the mystery of. I feel like we know what MVS is. We know what McCole Hardman is. Juju, I'm a little apprehensive on. But Sky Moore is also rising up big time. You're seeing in like the Football Guys drafts, he's a lock 8th round pick. Dan Williamson, another GOAT District member, he took him in our hardway draft in the 8th round. He actually took him ahead of Juju, which I think was notable. But it's just very interesting because you get the Chiefs exposure, and you don't have to use any premium draft capital on any of those wide receivers. So you could actually build a super stack with Mahomes. You could even go nuts and grab Jerick McKinnon as a running back option. So it's like what a difference a year make type deal.
Mm-hmm.
One mid-tier stack that I find myself easily building is Minnesota. If I'm able to get a Justin Jefferson, it's pretty easy to get Thielen. It's very easy to get Cousins. It's pretty easy to get Irv Smith. Is there any mid-tier stacks that you're looking to target, Jack? And then we'll follow up with you, JD, on your favorite kind of mid-tier stacks.
Let me look here. So how are we qualifying?
Yeah, I was wondering
mid-tier.
I would say mid-tier. Mid-tier would be to me a mid-tier stack would be, the way I would quantify it would be, you don't have to use necessarily a top 12 QB pick.
Okay.
I would use it. I would look at, obviously Jefferson cost you a ton, but Kirk Cousins is reasonable. I'd say you could take this Derek Carr and below type quarterbacks.
Okay. I'll include Carr because I think the Raiders are kind of fun. If you can get Adams, Waller, or Renfro. And then one I like the Vikings one too. So I think that was a good shout out. And then I think the Dolphins, if you can get Tyreek and or Waddle, I think that's a fun one. Tua is still young, so maybe we haven't really seen the whole range of outcomes for him. They have a new staff that maybe could lead to a more efficient offense, along with the overall talent upgrade. And then I think Cedric Wilson is a really easy way to get like really late round exposure. So if you want to get a really cheap double stack, if you have Tyreek or Waddle, and then you get Tua and you just want to add more correlation to your roster, Cedric Wilson is very affordable. And if something happens to Tyreek or Waddle, he could just be a wide receiver too, or the Dolphins wide receiver too, not a fantasy wide receiver too. And then Gesicki too. So I guess that would be one that I find myself falling into a good amount.
I'll add, I know Komet's one of our favorites on here. I love the Chicago stack because you can get Justin Fields, I think, at a nice value. And then, the narrow target tree that we talk about with Komet, Mooney. And I love Khalil Herbert. I'm not big on Demont at all this year, just for whatever reason, wear and tear, all that kind of, cliche running back stuff. But I'm loving I also like to draft receivers early and then attack running back late. So I'm getting the Pollards, those type of guys. But Khalil Herbert, definitely one of my favorites of what he showed us last year. But that's one offense. The other one that I like, I think, is sneaky, is with Jameis Winston being, where he is you can kind of grab some Olave, depending how risky you are. I haven't done it yet with Kamara. I don't know where you are, Theo. You're way riskier and you do a lot more volume. So I'm sure you've got some Kamara, but I just haven't been able to pull the trigger. But I do like the kind of late value you can get with that New Orleans stack.
Yeah, I like a lot. I think if you're going to play New Orleans right now, you just take the free square and you take Olave and Landry. The guys who are there, they're already good values. I think Olave is kind of moving up a little bit. Landry's 29, and he's got kind of gone home, close to where he grew up, and he was an LSU Tiger. I think that a Landry bounce back season could be fun. Um, I haven't really dove much into Saints stacking, but I can see your rationale with that.
I
What's
like
your
that
thoughts?
they play Philly in week 17 too, which is kind of nice.
How about you, Jack? New Orleans interest you?
I think so. I mean, really, like I'm looking at underdog ADP right now, and from Carr on, it's Carr, Cousins, Fields, Tua, Trevor, and Jameis, and like I think that's just a really good range of guys, and I think all of those guys are stackable. So, I mean, I think we've touched on all of them too. I think all of those are really good. For the Saints in specific, I agree with Olave and Landry. And I think Kamara's a pretty fine pick too. I'm not super scared of him, even with the stuff hanging over him. He should be on the field for most of the season, and most importantly, on the field when it matters. So that's kind of where I'm at with all of those.
Theo, let me do a quick, because we're talking underdog. We're talking about the big tourney. Play for $2 million. Right now, you can make a free $100 if you're not already on the site or on the app. Go sign up right now. Use the code DISTRICT, and you will get up to $100 matched on your first deposit. Guys, they got every kind of best ball you could think of. Basketball playoffs right now, NHL playoffs. You name the sport, they've got a game for you. They have prop betting. Go check out Underdog Fantasy right now on your mobile app or on the website and use the code DISTRICT.
I wanted to get into roster construction in an underdog format, an 18-man. What would be your preferred roster construction build? And maybe you can kind of get into like fragility and that sort of thing as well.
Yeah, so I think in terms of like number of players, and then I'll talk about like when I like to draft them and stuff. But like I think 2 quarterbacks is usually where I end up. 4 to 6 running backs, usually 5, and then 2 or 3 tight ends, depending on if I get an elite, and the rest receivers. And usually what I do is at running back, I'll take either 1 or 2 early, so like first 2 or 3 rounds. And then I like to focus more on tight end and receiver until like round 7. I think like once you get the Elijah Mitchell, that's when I start pivoting back to running back, because I like Elijah Mitchell. I think his ADP is like very barely inside round 6. And so that's where I kind of go with. I guess to label it, it would be either hero or bimodal / superhero RB, whatever the preferred terminology is. That's usually how I go. But I think remaining fluid is the most important thing. If something falls to me and I end up going either 0 RB or hyper fragile with 3 straight running backs to start, or 4 total running backs, I'll have some of those too. But I'd say the majority of my teams are either a running back or 2 early, and then hitting other positions for a while, then coming back to running back in the mid rounds.
And maybe you could refresh people what the bimodal. But so everybody kind of knows 0 RB, everybody knows hero RB, robust RB. But talk about the bimodal strategy. It's interesting.
Yeah. So bimodal. I don't remember who invented the name, but it's an RB start, and then you ignore the position until like round 7 or 8 or 9 or that general range. I think the name superhero RB is catching on for that, just because it kind of flows nicely with hero RB. So I guess that's like the hot term of the summer for that strategy, but same idea. And so basically, you get your 2 running backs early, you get your super high floor, high ceiling running backs, and then you just ignore the position for a long time, and then you kind of latch back onto the position at a time when you're getting into that range of guys who can break out and who we've seen a ton of breakouts from in the past. Just last year, I mean, Connor and Fournette came from that kind of 8 or 9 range. And so that's kind of the thesis behind it. It really, it really crushed last year. because Taylor, Eckler, Najee, Mixon all went in round 2. And so I think maybe it might be more popular this year just because it did so well last year because of the second round running backs. And that can't be expected to happen again. But it's been, I think, a plus EV strategy for years. So I still like to do it when the board aligns right.
JD, what about your build in an underdog? What do you find yourself doing most of the time?
Yeah, it's not much difference. I was laughing because I was literally writing as he was, kind of outlining, 2 QBs, 4 to 6 running backs, usually 5. It just depends how early I'm going. I talked about it last show, how as the off season or the draft season progresses, I'm more comfortable going like hyper fragile running backs and maybe doing a 4 running back build. I've even thrown in like a random 3 running back build if I really start strong at RB or get 3 that I really like. But I think on underdog, I find the receivers go a lot quicker, which is weird because it's half PPR. But yeah, I usually, and again, maybe it's just me because I love going receiver early and getting those guys early, and then kind of hammering the depth at running back. But yeah, I mean that's pretty much the range of my builds. But like Jack says, I mean, I kind of let the first 2 to 4 rounds, whatever falls to me or whatever I'm feeling in that draft, kind of plan out the rest of the draft for me, and it kind of outlines how I'm going to approach the rest of the draft or how that build's going to go. But I keep it fluid, man. I like mixing in. I'm not like this is how I build, this is how I'm going to build every time. I like to mix it up. That's why when you and I have these teams together, that's why it's fun to co-own teams with guys that you respect and guys that you want to play with, because they kind of open your eyes to different guys, different strategies that maybe you're not thinking, and that's what's fun about it.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think that's a really smart thing, JD. Is I don't think you'll find too many great players, whether it's Justin Herzig or Jack or Josh Larkey, who goes into a draft and says, "This is the strategy I'm going to do." Usually, you make a pick or 2, and then the strategy kind of falls into place. You draft value early on, and I think that's the best way to go about it. You brought up the bimodal strategy, or we could call it the superhero, or basically for the old school people, starting RB, and then kind of ignoring it for a while. Plan that hit well last year. One plan that hasn't hit was bully tight end, like 2 tight ends in the first 3 rounds. Do you think that this is a viable strategy to get a Kelsey and let's say a Kelsey Pitts, something along those lines? Do you think that this could be a viable strategy, or is it something we should be ignoring?
So I don't think I would go 2 in the first 3. Like, I don't think I'd go Kelsey Andrews or Kelsey Pitts. And to be honest, like in general, I haven't done it a whole lot, but I did read this article on RotoViz by Madison Parkhill that was advocating for it. And it cited basically that it had really good win rates on best ball 10s, which aren't as popular anymore, but it's still a larger sample size than we have with underdog. And then he also made a good point about how, since people kind of just think it doesn't work, it's going to be really unique. And so that article kind of made me think. I read that article recently, so I don't have a ton so far, but maybe I'm going to start incorporating that. I don't think it's like something you're going to want to do a whole lot of, but if you can get Kelsey and then, you're on the clock in the 4th or 5th round and Waller Kittle is 6 picks past ADP, I don't think it's necessarily like crushing to take a second tight end there. And I think the uniqueness factor is a good point to make. And so it's something that if it comes to me, maybe I'll have a few bully tight end builds.
And if you're going to go bully tight end, essentially you should be a 0 RB build, or are you kind of ignoring a little bit of the wide receiver position? Would you be kind of attacking tight end and wide receiver early, kind of an almost a 0 build, or would you try to balance it out? I don't know the optimal strategy with that one. I wonder what you think of that.
Yeah, I don't have a perfect answer offhand. I think what I would be inclined to do is get like 1 running back, whether that be in the first round or whether that be like an Etienne or a Dobbins or one of those guys who I like in the middle rounds. I don't know, especially on underdog. I think maybe on FFPC it's more viable with the full PPR and the 2 flex. But I think on underdog at least, I would want to get at least 1 running back. And so that's kind of where I'm at. I wouldn't want to go full 0, but light on running back with 1 running back, 2 tight ends, and then the rest receivers early is where I'd land.
That's a great segue to the next question, and we're reaching almost an hour, so I want to try to get a lot more of your opinions on these. You put out an awesome article on late round running back targets, and it seemed like that was you referenced underdog ADP, but that could be used in redraft or best ball. Maybe you could share a couple of your favorite late round RB targets and kind of the range you'd be comfortable taking them in.
Yeah, so I think of the earlier late round tight ends, like the mid round guys, I think Miles Sanders would be my favorite. When he was on the field last year, he was pretty productive. He didn't score a touchdown, which is crazy considering the number of touches he had. And then he had really bad luck too. I think he left 4 different games early. And so that kind of put a dagger on his numbers, just because he only it looks like he played a full game in this game, but really he left at halftime or whatever. But when he was on the field, he got a lot of carries. He ran as many routes as Kenny Gainwell. So Gainwell is going to get some 3rd down looks, but I think Sanders is still I don't think Sanders is going to be a complete 0 in the passing game. And then I kind of like the Eagles offense this year. I think it could be sneaky good. So Sanders is a guy I like. A little later on, I like Darrell Henderson, which is kind of just a hedge on what if Akers isn't all the way back from the Achilles, and then because Akers wasn't great toward the tail end of last year, and then if something happens to Akers again, Henderson just could step into a big role on a good offense, and then maybe they split it up and Henderson gets some passing downs regardless of Akers' health status this year. So he's a guy I like.
Plus the rookie's got a broken foot.
Yeah, Kyron Williams has a broken foot. Melvin Gordon is another guy I think is interesting, because if something happens, he should have a role in a much improved offense with Russ. And then if Javonte goes down, he could enter a big role on a good offense. And then the last 2 guys I want to bring up would be the 2 rookies with James Cook, who could be the passing down back right away with potential for more on a big passing offense, and Rachaad White, who should be the handcuff to Fournette and could be a league winner down the stretch if Fournette doesn't hold up.
No, I love it. And shout out to John Daigle, who was on our show recently. We talked a lot of best ball. But the Miles Sanders one is super interesting. He brought up Sanders as well. And Sanders, all he's got to do is fall in the end zone a couple times, and his stats would have looked a lot better. All of the Eagles running backs were managing to score rushing touchdowns, and Sanders had 0. So I think if Jordan Howard and Boston Scott can do it, I think Miles Sanders can do it. So he's pretty interesting. And while we're on the subject of running backs, you've talked about the dead zone. You seem to like J.K. Dobbins right now as one of your favorite dead zone guys, and maybe you're a little higher on him than Travis Etienne. Maybe you kind of share your thoughts on Dobbins and why you like him so much. Yeah,
so Dobbins, I think, is my favorite running back in the dead zone right now. His ADP is kind of stabilized, but for a while it was falling even further, and so you could get him late 5th round on underdog. I think now his ADP is 56, which is still kind of late 5th round. But he'll be 12 months removed from the injury in August, so he should be good to go for the season. And the Ravens, not last year, but the previous years before that, were the run heaviest offense in the league through when they needed to. But then for the most part, it was Lamar and the running backs. And Dobbins is in a very similar situation to where he was last year when he was going 2 rounds earlier. And now we're just getting a discount because we didn't see him for a year when ACL recoveries are not as horrific as they used to be. And he has had a very long time to recover from the injury. So I think he should be good to go for week 1 with no restrictions, and maybe for training camp too. And we're getting a big discount from where he was last year. This offense, I think, is going to run a lot. It's going to be an efficient rushing offense. Dobbins was super efficient as a rookie, and efficiency is kind of sporadic, but I think you can count on Dobbins for above average, at least, efficiency. And I think the spike week potential with a good offense, an efficient rushing offense, is pretty abundant because he can have a lot of yards and touchdowns, even if he's not getting like 20 carries and 3 targets a game.
Yeah, I know JD and I are big fans of Dobbins as well. What Travis Etienne seems to be like the biggest riser right now, at least in redraft. He's in fuego. We've seen him go in the second round a couple times. He never really seems to fall past the mid-third. I'd say besides Michael Pittman, he's the biggest riser right now. Saquon as well. What's your thoughts on Travis Etienne and attacking him in that when he falls into that dead zone area? You don't seem quite as bullish on him as you do maybe a Dobbins.
Yeah, I was bullish, or more bullish, I should say, on Etienne a couple weeks ago when he was going at like the 4-5 turn on underdog. But he is rising.
Blame you.
And yeah, I mean,
Listen.
Second round for Etienne seems really aggressive to me. Third round, I think I take a receiver. I think there's a path to him paying that off, but I think in general, I like to go receiver at that point with a DJ Moore or Waddle. Are you a big Etienne guy? It sounds like.
Well, I was drafting a lot of Etienne. I think now when he's starting to go to a point in the draft where I don't see myself necessarily taking him. Like we talked about this the other night. Like, and I'll bring Pittman into this. Like Pittman is now going like wide receiver 12, so it's like he's getting picked towards his like top range of outcomes. And of course he could have a great season, but I don't see him being like wide receiver 1 overall contention. Like maybe a wide receiver 5, wide receiver 6, if it all goes right. And with Etienne, it's like, we're going to start drafting him. Like when he was an RB2, I liked him a lot more. But like when you talk about mid-second round, if it's like Deebo Samuel versus Travis Etienne, like I'm just not doing it. T. Higgins, Travis Etienne, I can't do it. JD and I did take Travis Etienne at the 301 in this best ball tournament we're in FFPC, and I liked the idea of a Jonathan Taylor with Etienne combination. I think that's just, it seemed like if it falls together, it could go well. I just worry about Etienne being steamed too high up. Like running back 14, running back 15 seems about right, but now he's starting to go ahead of Javonte Williams. He's starting to go ahead of guys that could also have, just as similar range of outcomes. So I am an Etienne guy, but I think he might get steamed up too high. What do you think, JD?
Yeah, I mean, like you said, we took him at 301. It's funny. I was just pulling up my football guys. I got the 102. I thought you were throwing me under the bus earlier because I took JJ at 102. I went back and forth, man, between CMC and JJ. Anyways, the CMC thing is a whole conversation. But I pull up the draft board here. That was my decision coming back. So I took JJ in the first. I took Kyle Pitts coming back at 211. And then it came back and T. Higgins was sitting there. And I'm a sucker for T. Higgins, man. I just had to take him coming back to me in the third round. But Etienne was definitely one on my mind. And, when you and I started talking strategy and started doing our draft, he was going like back end of the third into the fourth round, Theo. So it's getting expensive. Like you said, even Pittman, man, I'm a Colts fan. I love me some Pittman, but it's getting expensive, and you know how it is, right? People, it's that new guy that you get to like, that you get to draft. And that's what I think is happening with some of these guys now, because, some of these guys are old news, man. The Diggs or whatever. You see Sutton moving up. You see where are you in the Denver guys, Jack? You see Sutton and Judy moving up right now. I see Sutton just went off the board first, actually, as the wide receiver 13, just ahead of Pittman in this football, guys. How do you feel about the Denver receivers?
And also, Jack, could you also say which one you prefer if you're going Judy or Sutton?
Yeah, so I've been of the opinion that Judy should be drafted first. I know Sutton has recently overtaken him. The thing is, I don't know did you guys see the tweet that like Cortland Sutton is the clear wide receiver 1, and then Tim Patrick is wide receiver 2, and so I mean I don't think Tim Patrick's going to be receiver 2, but like the fact that even a reporter would say that and just keep raving about Sutton made me rethink things. I guess I would just take, if I had to pick one, I don't know. I might be more on Sutton now. I don't know if I'm putting too much stock in that. I think whoever's later in terms of ADP will be the guy I'll have more of. If I had to pick one right now, I'd stick with Judy.
Yeah, I think it's interesting. Like Sutton is starting to go. I think that he's like very popular, at least in football guys, where you'll see him go at like the 4 or 5 turn, whereas Judy gets slightly later sometimes. So I don't know. If you put a lot of stock into the JD won't even acknowledge the Denver beat writers right now, because the Denver beat writers are ready to bury his boy Albert O and crown Greg Dulcich the rookie of the year.
Value Town. Albert O is in Value Town.
These beat writers, it's June. They get bored. They write stuff.
No, but they were talking about him like when Alberto wasn't even in camp yet. You know what I mean? Like, oh yeah, look at this big tight end. He's catching so many balls. Well, there's no one competing for targets, so obviously he's.
It's the same with Judy actually, because he has like a groin thing right now. So he hasn't been playing either. But like, I think I'm probably thinking about it too much. I would still take Judy.
Put it regardless. This way: you think Russell Wilson came over because of Tim Patrick? As much as people love him,
yeah,
let's face it.
Exactly.
He came over because of Sutton, because of Judy, and because of Alberto. Man, trust me.
Yeah. 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 Oh, sorry. You go.
Breece Hall. Jack, you haven't mentioned Breece Hall,
and maybe him versus the guys you just talked about, like versus the Etiennes and the JKs.
And does he become more appealing in that dead zone when Etienne starts getting steamed up, and maybe Hall kind of stays where he's at?
I think so. I mean, Breece Hall is like a really good prospect. So I think he's going pretty early, but like I still have my fair share of Breece Hall, and I think I'll continue drafting him. So that's where I'm at. Like with Breece Hall, he's not like a major target for me. But like I've been drafting him, so I'm fine with him at his ADP just because I want to bet on the talent, even if there's questions about how much Michael Carter will get and the Jets offense.
It's like end of the third, beginning of the fourth, which is where Etienne was, but now Etienne's been pulled up and Hall stayed there, which is kind of what Theo's getting at. So I guess Hall becomes value now, right?
Hall, like what running back, I'd say like early fourth. I think like he'll probably settle in. Like JD said, maybe he'll steam up but he'll be somewhere in like that running back 16, 17-ish. Maybe running back 18-ish range. So he's appealing. Is there a dead zone running back that let's for our listeners? We'll remove Josh Jacobs because he's falling. He nearly fell to the 7th round in a draft I'm in. Removing Josh Jacobs, who is the one dead zone running back you do not want Go District listeners to draft this year? If you could take one and put him on a do not draft list, I'm sure there's a few. But who's your least favorite dead zone running back? The one you're betting against?
So if Jacobs got vetoed, this might get vetoed, but he's still in the 6th round on underdog. Is Antonio Gibson? Does he count?
He counts. He counts, absolutely.
They're in the same right now. They're both going in the 5th round.
On underdog, he's in the 6th round. But yeah, Antonio Gibson does not really. I don't really think he's gonna have a great year. Rivera said it's gonna be a 3-headed monster at running back. McKissick was getting a bunch of targets when he was healthy last year. I think he had a 14% target share before he got hurt. And then they spend a day 2 pick, a fairly decent investment into a running back in Brian Robinson. And then the offense just doesn't project to be that good on the whole. So Antonio Gibson is not really someone I'm looking to draft this year.
Well, there you go. And is there a pivot play in Washington, or you're just going to try to avoid those running backs in general?
I've been drafting a little McKissick because he goes super late, but not like a ton of him. I do have a good amount of Terry McLaurin and Jahan Dotson, but like on the whole, not an offense I'm super heavily invested in.
So we're in an hour 10. Who are your guys this year, Jack? You can go redraft, you can go best ball, you can go as deep as you want, you can go as early as you want. Who are the guys that you're most bullish on that you want to get on as many teams as possible and potential league winners?
Yeah, so this year, like, there hasn't been a guy who I'm just like tweeting about every day. Like the past couple years, there's been like one guy. Like last year it was T. Higgins. The year before, it was Gibson. But some of the guys I really like. I just pulled up my underdog exposure. The guys I'm most exposed to right now. I have a lot of Rashad White, a lot of Irv Smith, a lot of Tony, a lot of Khalil Herbert, a lot of Melvin Gordon. And so those are like the late guys I like. We talked about Gordon. We talked about Herbert. I think Irv Smith with Tyler Conklin gone, Thielen getting up there in age, and maybe a pass happier offense under the new staff. I think he could have a real nice year. Another guy kind of like Dobbins, who maybe people are just forgetting about after he didn't play last year. White we talked about too. And then among the early round guys, Godwin is someone I like for the late season kind of push in best ball tournaments. I think in tournaments especially, he's kind of a good play. For like normal best ball leagues, I don't really think he's that viable. And for redraft, he's less viable just because they're less happy or less top heavy, I should say. Some other early round guys I like are Elijah Moore. I've just been a big Elijah Moore fan since he was a prospect. And I kind of like just like the Jets offense as a team that could maybe surpass expectations because they have so much talent. It really just comes down to like if Zach Wilson can be good, and then
Or just be normal. If he can just be average,
just like a decent fantasy quarterback. Then like Elijah Moore, Garrett Wilson, Brees, like all these guys can pay off ADP. And then as usual, I have a lot of DJ Moore.
Gotta love DJ Moore.
Every year.
It's going to happen one year. He's going to get 10 touchdowns. We're all going to be standing on our head happy.
Yeah,
I love DJ Moore too, man.
Or even like 7 touchdowns would be far better than what he's done before.
7 would be awesome.
And so that's kind of my list of guys I've been drafting a lot of this year.
Good list. That's a good list.
Are we talking week 17, Theo? I know you're itching. I want
to save the best for last year. What are your favorite games to attack in the week 17? A lot of people are correlating this week 17 into their best ball strategy. What are your favorite games to attack, and maybe a couple of low key games that you want us getting a little bit of exposure to?
Yeah, so I don't know. I mean, I obviously like Bucks, Panthers, and Bills, Bengals. I've been trying to get a lot of those. I don't know how under the radar we want to get here. You can tell me if this counts. I like the Raiders-Niners game. I think that
Jack,
one.
It's June and we're doing like a 3-hour podcast on.
We
want to get
game
degenerate as you can get, brother.
All right, I took the quiz. Justin Herzig tweeted like a Quizlet link on like week 17 matchups, and I don't remember my exact score, but I did not get 100%. So when I'm making picks, I still pull up like the list. One I like, I guess. I don't really love the Seahawks, but like I think Tyler Lockett is priced decently, so I like Lockett and the Jets as one. But I guess the issue with that, it's mostly just a testament to like I've been drafting the Jets because I think DK is overpriced and I'm not really drafting a ton of their running backs. So I guess Jets plus Lockett is kind of fun.
Guys, let me just say, man, the winning game 17, I'm telling you right now, week 17 game, Jacksonville, Houston. That thing's gonna be like a crazy 42 to 38 like crazy game, and I'm telling you, somebody's gonna walk home with $2 million. Thanks to Davis Mills. You know what I'm saying?
It's gonna be 42-39 or 16-14, depending on whether they want to be there or not. I think that. Go ahead, Jack.
Oh, sorry. I was going to say, I hope it's due to Trevor Lawrence instead of Davis Mills because I have a good amount of Jag stacks with Lawrence and his receivers.
That would be a fun one if that was the one that made all the money. I think that an interesting game will be the Cowboys at the Titans. just because if you get a monster score, you'd have to sweat it out from Thursday night on. And on the same token, that Cincinnati Buffalo game is the Monday night game. So like all these people could be exposed to the game, and you've got to wait till like the very last game. So it's obvious, but that's great. And then obviously the LA game where neither team has to travel, they play each other. Chargers Rams. It's could potentially have playoff implications. That could be fun. That Eagles Saints game, you guys brought that up. That's an interesting game. It's Broncos Chiefs though for me. Like we like the Broncos defense.
That could be a flop. That could be a flop. You know what the sneaky game is, Theo? You know what the sneaky game is? Arizona Atlanta fireworks.
Absolutely, Arizona Atlanta could be a real good one.
You got value on Kyler right now. You know what I mean? You have no idea who the QB is in Atlanta. Get those Kyle Pitts shares.
Yeah, it's definitely fun to galaxy brain these week 17 ones. I just think there's gonna be so many people banking on that Cincinnati Buffalo game that I think it's gonna probably be not that one. The 49ers Raiders in Vegas. You won't have weather concerns. You got to think there could be some playoff implications. That could be a really fun one. You can spot a couple games you don't want any piece of, but I think that could be a really fun one. Try to build some 49ers Raiders builds. I think it's very doable to have, Lance and Carr with a bunch of exposure in that game. So that one for me is super interesting as well. And Colts Giants, if the Giants care, the game's in New York. Colts could score a lot of points this year. That could be a fun one as well. And again, like Jack brought up, Daniel Jones is super cheap if you want to get exposure to that one. So, yeah, week 17, we're already galaxy braining for something that happens after Christmas. But it sure is fun, right?
It is. I didn't even know Bengals. I knew Cowboys Titans was Thursday. I did not know Bengals Bills was Monday. So that's actually going to be crazy.
Everybody's going to be tilting their heads off on that one.
Mm-hmm.
Titans Cowboys though, imagine you had a huge score and you had to sweat it out, all the way until Monday night. It would be a really tough one.
Yeah, and I mean, with most games on Sunday and with Best Ball Mania last year, just kind of it all happens at once. But this year, maybe we'll get we'll see who's in first, and they'll tweet about it, and then we'll have a live sweat between two people, one person who's in first and then one person who's a Bengals Bill stack and needs X points, and then we can get a live sweat for the best ball 2 million, which would be fun. Good content there.
No, absolutely.
I love it, guys. Remember, code district. Theo, anything left in the question box for?
No, I think we're up to almost an hour and 20. This was awesome. I'm in three Best Ball Manias right now. I can't wait till I'm OTC. We really galaxy brained this one. This has been a lot of fun.
Guys, at Jack Miller 02. Jack, this has been a blast, man. It's been a blast talking stacks, talking balling, talking best ball. Remind the peeps of all the goodness you're dropping over there. Establish the run. Anything else you want to let them know about before we close this out?
Yeah, I'll be writing best ball articles, and when the time comes, more redraft focused stuff on ETR all off season. You said Jack Miller 02 on Twitter, and that's pretty much all I got in terms of plugging.
Awesome. Theo, this has been a blast. Who do we have coming up, brother?
So next week we have we have two shows next week. One will have Dave Hubbard, one of the best high stakes players in the country, along with Billy Muzio, also a great high stakes player. They partner up on a number of teams, some extremely high entry teams in multiple formats. So we're going to talk to them about how they're seeing the season, as well as their strategy to co-managing in high stakes formats. If you listen to a lot of our high stakes shows last year, you're going to like it because we're starting to have some of those guys back on the show. We also have Heath Cummings of CBS coming on next week. So it should be a really, really fun week for us back in the GOAT District.
Guys, we bring the best. That's what we do. Always be stacking, right? That's the message we got tonight. We've been saying I'll always be stacking for how many years now? And now the data is supporting it. We were just too stupid to come up with data ourselves. So we had, Jack came in, our boy Larky. So guys, the message of the night is keep stacking those stacks. Listener League. I want to give a shout out to the guys who have sent in your emails. We've got Theo, man. We got like a really nice group so far. We got Vincent. We've got Famous Jay, who was in the chat. Shout out to the chat tonight. Joe Massa, Casey, Joey, our boy Joey, always supporting the show. We appreciate him. And then we got Mike and Trevor and then Frank. So we got almost a full league, Theo. So we might actually be doing a second. So guys, keep them coming. goatdistrict@gmail.com. We're going to do some $35 best ball leagues, listener leagues on the FFPC. If you don't already have an account on there, make sure you tag one of us or at Goat District. We'll hook you guys up with a sign-up bonus, and then we'll just we'll do a live draft. We'll have fun drafting, and we'll get some listener leagues going. And Matty Big Chest, I just want to give him a big shout out. Did our new graphics that we started flexing tonight. You'll see a lot more coming. We appreciate him. We appreciate the man with the buns, the man bun himself, for this. And we thank you all for paying attention to us tonight. Check us out on YouTube and on Spotify now. We'll check you all later.
Go District. Bleed, I ball. Bleed, I ball. Bleed, I ball. Bleed, ball. And I bleed, I ball. Bleed, I ball. It's the Go District, y'all. I ball, cause I bleed. Hey, bleeding, I ball. Defeated the odds, didn't see him at all. JD in the pods, I needed it all. I bleeded a lie, you bleeded a lie, not bleeded a lie. And that's what a goat do. Facts, let me show you. Happen to know dudes. Drafting, they don't do bad and they don't lose. Make you wanna bleed. It's the Go District, boys giving you the business and no gimmicks. The best ball drafts got me feeling like it's Christmas. Then it's Christmas all of a sudden, and these riches came from nothing. And I got this all from loving a district. See, I just drafted, forget it. I laugh at the critics, they mad at the digits. I clap back by listening. See, ballin' ain't a problem if you kick it with them off. And I refresh the feed till autumn, then I bleed, go.
Awesome show, guys. That was a lot of fun.
Sweet, yeah, that was good. Thanks for having me on. And I really do love the intro outro song.
Gabe is fire, man. Gabe is fire.
Yeah, that's really good.
We got to play the ball. We have two other awesome songs. We have the Ballin' one, which is like our best ball show. Sometimes we do best ball drafts, or we have guests like yourself, and we play a different intro. That's money. And then we have the Half Milli Billies, which is like our high stakes draft one. And that song is great too. It's like the best song.
Yeah, we're waiting on Gabe to edit that one because it was initially the quarter Milli Billies and it's the Milli Billies now. But you know his kids get in the way, man. These babies, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
we love
kids,
Gabe,
right?
Shout out to Gabe.